All right. So, welcome to the Healthy Start San Bernardino podcast. I'm Natasha, the consortium manager, and today we're honoring Men's Health Month by centering men's well being, physically, emotionally, and mentally, with a conversation that doesn't get enough space: fathers grieving the loss of a child. This episode includes discussion of pregnancy and infant loss and may be heavy for some listeners. Please take care of yourself as you listen. I'm honored to be joined by Jeff Loving, author of Holding On to the Light: A Father's Journey through loss and healing. His book gives voice to fathers who are often expected to stay silent and just hold everything together, even while experiencing profound grief. Jeff, thank you for being here today. And can you start by introducing yourself and sharing what brought you here to this work?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. I
Mm-hmm.
really appreciate the time. Like I said, my name is Jeff Loving. Also, author name is J.S. Loving. If you were looking for any of my books online, um, what brought me to this field, I guess you could say, my wife Cassie and I actually went through two losses in 2021 and 2023, both second trimester losses.
Mm-hmm.
We lost our two boys, Davian and Jaden, and I felt through our process um, that I, as a father, did not have the necessary resources that I wanted to have um, compared to what my wife was given, if I'm being completely honest. I just kind of felt like a lot of the resources and the support that I was being given was minimal at best, and sometimes not even there, I guess you could say. And it
Mm-hmm.
was just really tough because I was like, I want to grieve my sons, but I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how. I feel like I don't have the support. And basically, after Jaden passed, I decided to write a book. And so I was like, I want to bring my talents of being a writer and my passion for being a advocate for lost fathers and lost families and pool those together to bring a resource to the larger narrative and the larger community. So I wrote a short book. It's about 126 pages long, and it's mainly aimed for fathers of loss, but it's
Mm-hmm.
open to anybody to read it, honestly, whether that be families, whether that be people that have never experienced loss. Like, I've had a lot of feedback saying that even people that have never gone through this, that just know people that
Mm-hmm.
have been in this situation, have felt that they have a better understanding of not only what it's like for the men, but
Mm-hmm.
just in general what it's like to know firsthand from somebody's account what it's like to go through a loss of a child. And that was really beneficial for me. And that was really therapeutic, honestly, for me to
Amazing.
write that
Mm-hmm.
out. So, and that's why I'm here, and I've been doing advocacy work for about a year now. The book came out last February, so 2025. And in that time, I've been on multiple podcasts. I've been working with different organizations, just trying to spread the word and the awareness of lost dads, the need for resources, and just partnering with organizations as much as I can. So, and that's why I'm here today.
And thank you so much, Jeff. So, Jeff, fathers are often overlooked in grief spaces, so we're really grateful that you're helping to change that. So, for listeners meeting you for the first time, you you also share that you're located in North Carolina. So, how has your location impacted your connection to community and support?
Yeah, so our first loss with Davian, actually, we were living in Nebraska at the time. And we genuinely like the community there was
Mm-hmm.
huge. Like they all of our friends and family came around us. My family's from Iowa originally, so it's not too far of a drive.
Okay.
But the amount of support that we received while being there was like we were so blessed to have our friends and family back in Nebraska and in Iowa. And we had people coming from Oregon, we had people coming from Maryland. Like where my wife is originally from. Basically, all these people came together. When we moved to North Carolina, we just were like, we need a fresh start. We need a new change of scenery. We just need to be given a sense of like breathing room, grounding. And the mountains, honestly, are like that for us, like our grounding place. So that's kind of why we came out to North Carolina. We bought a house, moved out here, and kind of started fresh, like coming right out of our first loss. And looking back on it, I don't think we were running away from anything, but we were definitely like trying to heal, trying to separate from the situation to really process what we had just gone through. And we grew a lot in that short year and a half, from Davian to losing Jaden almost, I guess it would have been 2 years later. And then while we were here, when we lost Jaden, again, we had made some community connections in our city that we live in right now in North Carolina, and our life group from our church came and surrounded us. They supported us with meals, with just taking care of our dog, like taking care of our house, showing extreme compassion and love for us. But then also, our friends back in Nebraska again, like showed up, and they didn't even have to. Like, some people came out to visit us from Nebraska multiple times
That's
over the
great.
years.
Yeah.
So it's just it didn't matter where we were living. We still had so much support come around us, and it's not lost on me how blessed we are in that category, because I know there's a lot of people that don't have that community. And that's probably one of the hardest things about going through a loss, is the lack of support and the lack of community. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate for organizations that are supporting men, that are supporting women,
Hmm.
that are supporting families, that are supporting like awareness for people that aren't in those situations, but can like partner with them to like help with events. So like
Hmm.
um the Wave of Light event in October, like it's been going on for a handful of years, but like a lot of people that I know didn't know about it until our
Hmm.
story. And that's been a huge talking point of like, it's okay to talk about our kids. It's okay to talk about the the story that we've gone through, and like that it just educates people, so that when conversations do come up and
Hmm.
eventual questions come up, I feel like it really allows that door to already be open, and it's not awkward when somebody asks me like, do you have any kids? Like, before our daughter, it's like, do you have any kids? And it's like, how do I answer that? I
Right.
have two
Yeah.
kids that we lost. Like, yeah, I'm a dad, but they're not Earthside. And sometimes people feel really uncomfortable with that. But
Hmm.
I would say that it didn't matter for us where we were living, because the community was so rich and so encouraging for us, and that was a huge blessing.
I love that for you guys, that you had such community that could rally behind you during that difficult time. So I want to ask, when grief first hit, what did your day to day look like? Not just emotionally, but also physically.
Yeah. Um, so for the first one with Davian, when we were in Nebraska, I remember vividly that coming home from the hospital, we delivered him on the 24th of November, and it was the day before Thanksgiving, and we get discharged. Um, and my family was so generous. They came down to our apartment in Lincoln at the time, and they were like, "Hey, you don't have to do anything. We will prepare everything." They just set out our entire table, set out our entire meal, because we were supposed to go up to my family to go have Thanksgiving with them, and they came down to us. And I just remember how appreciative I was of my family. Um, I always joke like they tend to live up to our last name very, very well. Um, and so that was just really encouraging to see that played out. And after they left, it was the aftermath of kind of getting into our day-to-day routines again after his funeral and everything. And um, it was a lot of unknown. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know how to feel. We didn't know how to communicate with each other. Um, and I talk about this in the book, in our section, but I've also said this many times before, where it's like somebody told us very early on in our first loss that having a loss like that will either make or break a marriage. And we were only in a year into our marriage at that point. So we were about a year and a half after we lost Davian. And there were times where we genuinely were like, are we going to make it out of this? Are we just going to separate and just go our own ways? Like, is that easier for both of us? And that was a very real conversation that we've had. Um, and I'm thankful that I can say that we didn't choose that, but it wouldn't have been out of hard feelings or anything. But um, yeah, finding the strength and the willingness to give ourselves grace and knowing that not everything is going to be fine every day. Like there were some times where I would be bawling my eyes out on the couch and my wife would be cleaning the kitchen. And then 5 minutes later, the roles would be reversed. And it's a day-to-day situation. It's like there wasn't any right or wrong answer of how we approached it. Um, and I would genuinely say like our community was huge to get us through that first loss. And then going to therapy was another huge thing for both of us. And just really talking through it and being given permission to grieve as a dad was huge because I don't know if any listeners would have been through this situation, but oftentimes well-meaning people say like you need to show up for your family, you need to provide, you need to be there for your wife. She's grieving your child. You can't like put your selfishness in front of that. You have to go and work. You have to go make dinner. Like it's just this backwards thinking of because you're the man, you're the leader of the house, especially in a Christian background, like growing up as a Christian in the church, us men are expected to lead in every area, which I agree with, and to like lead the household. But at the same time, it's like, how can I lead properly if I'm not processing what I'm going through and my grief with the loss of my son, you know? And so that was really hard for me to wrestle with. And I eventually did come out of that and was given that permission from a really great mentor and therapist of mine that I was meeting with. And then so with Jaden, our second, as twisted and morbid as this is, we were kind of prepared to know what we were going through because we had already been through it. So we were obviously in the depths of our grief. We were like distraught because we thought we were going to have a little boy, and I'll go more into that in a little bit. But basically, the second pregnancy was exactly like the first one. It played out exactly like the first, and long story short, it could have been avoided. His loss could have been avoided had medical intervention been taken serious. And we asked for medical intervention, but we were not denied, but not, I would say, not listened to. Um, and that was really hard because we felt that we had done everything that we could have in that moment, and we just weren't listened to. And I don't know if it was bias or if it was medical history or if there was a racial portion of it because my wife happens to also be black, and statistically, um, it's common that black women are just not treated the same as other women of color or Caucasian descent, and part of us thinks it was part of that, like that bias of like she wasn't taken serious because she happens to be a black woman, and it's like a lot of components all wrapped up into that. And I think with Jaden's loss, it was more of us grieving the process leading up to his loss versus the actual loss itself. Like, obviously, we did grieve him, but that was more familiar day to day because we were like, okay, we know that me, I need to do something. I need to go be productive. I need to go write something. I need to go build something. I need to go fix something. My wife needs to internalize and sit with it and process it alone without any outside intervention.
Mm.
And I had to be willing to give her that space and vice versa. And that was something that we learned from Davian's loss. And so that was really helpful. Um, as cruel as it was, but it did teach us like how we each grieve, and it's different, and that's okay. And to just give each other grace in that regard. And so I think that our marriage definitely was cracked and tested and in some points broken, but through the grace and the patience and the love and care that we had for one another through it in our day to day, it definitely mended it. And I would say that it mended it in a way that we were able to walk through Jaden's loss together, broken, but also still hopeful for the future because now we have a little girl that's she's almost a year old and she turns 1 in 11 days.
Oh, wow. Soon.
It's like, yeah, that,
Yeah.
and the craziest thing about that is we did the medical prevention with her
Hmm.
for pregnancy that we could have done with Jaden, and we have a healthy, thriving, almost 1 year old. And it's like it just makes you think what could have been,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
had we
And
been
I'm
what we
sorry
did.
that the medical system failed you guys in that regard. That's a story we hear often, unfortunately, the stories that we continue to hear. And one of the goals with our consortium is we're trying to find ways to mitigate those issues, which is why we love to partner with other organizations, community members, and families like yourself to find solutions that are rooted in community, in the experiences of our families, to find solutions so this doesn't keep happening. But take a moment for yourself if you need it, because that was.
I'm good. I'm good.
You
It's
sure? Okay.
just a moment. Yeah, it's
Okay.
mainly because it's like
Mhm.
I'm like I obviously still have moments where I think about the boys and I cry over their stories, but
Mhm.
recently it's more in line with being grateful
Mhm.
and just feeling the overwhelming blessing that is our daughter. So, despite our challenges and despite our infertility journey and our loss journey and our NICU journey with her,
Mhm.
it's like she's such a blessing, and I'm just like I'm truly in my girl dad era, and
I love that.
I'm
Girl
absolutely
dad. Yeah.
absolutely
I
thriving,
love
and
that.
I
Yeah.
love her so much, and it's like
Mhm.
I would move mountains for her because she's
I'm
just such a
sure.
special little girl. So
Cherish every moment. Cherish every moment. But I'm glad to hear that you and your wife had the self awareness to know how you both grieve, what you needed from each other, what you didn't need from each other, and that you were able to to salvage, your relationship through that difficult time. Um, I'm not sure. I know that they have like support groups. I don't know how much of like couples support groups that they have usually, or like couples therapy sessions for couples experiencing loss. Is that something that's like accessible?
um so we
Hmm.
didn't personally go through couples therapy.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure I've heard of it. I wouldn't be able to tell you right off the
Okay.
top of my head,
Okay.
any
Hmm.
organizations, but I'm sure there's something out there.
Okay.
My wife luckily was able to find a grief and loss therapist in the area. Um, I was able to connect with a loss therapist as well, and so they're out there. We just didn't do couples therapy personally, so it's like they, if you look hard enough, you can definitely find people. And then for the loss community in general, it's like the amount of organizations, nonprofits out there that are there for infertility, infant loss, IVF awareness, like
Hmm.
um, it's not PCOS anymore, PMOS,
It's
I think it is.
PMOS, I think it's now. Yeah.
Yeah, they just
Hmm.
recently changed that name. Just the awareness around all of that, like there's so many people that you can go follow on Instagram, on Facebook, um, local events, like just you literally Google something, you probably could find
Hmm.
something in your city, honestly,
Okay.
wherever you're at. So
Thank you. So I wanted to circle back to like the emotional, the mental aspect of when we're going through grief, but specifically when men are going through grief. Because as you mentioned, a lot of times they're told, you're the man of the house, you have to hold it together, you have to be strong, be there for your wife, be there for your other children if you have them. And oftentimes they are told to overlook what they're feeling. And sometimes they might not even know that they're carrying the grief as heavily as they are. And some physical ways that grief can manifest themselves physically is like lack of sleep or loss of sleep, loss of appetite or overeating, tension in your body that you're just holding, headaches, fatigue. So I wanted to ask you, when you were dealing with that, were there any physical signs that you were holding and carrying grief?
yeah, I would definitely say like I did not sleep
Mm.
most nights. I'd maybe get 3 hours of sleep, and then I'd just be up all night. I also feel like I I couldn't sit still.
Mm.
I needed to be doing something. I'm a busybody when I'm like in, I don't want to say in trauma, but like in trauma, in grief, or in like heavy emotional situations. I just need to be doing something, whether that be going on a walk, writing down something, building something, cleaning, honestly, like mowing the yard. Um, those are just some things that I physically need to do something when I'm personally going through grief, because it helps me process,
Mm.
where I can have my hands or my feet doing something so my brain can focus in on the task
Mhm.
that's like, what am I actually processing? And I know not everybody processes like that. Like for my wife, that's completely the opposite. She has to sit and internalize and like walk through what she's feeling and like explore those different avenues and different pockets of her grief, versus me, where it's like if I am sitting with my thoughts with nothing to do, I'm just going to get distracted. I'm going to get overwhelmed. I'm going to be like, I have to physically be doing something, um, to help me focus. And sometimes it's more so like, I would say, quote unquote, mindless tasks. So I don't really have to think about it. So mowing the lawn, for example, I don't really have to think about how to mow the lawn. I just walk back
Mhm.
and forth, pushing the
Right.
mower, and
Right.
but
Mhm.
it allows me to just kind of have conversations with my inner self, with just pray about it, honestly, and just think about that. And I know that not everybody aligns with, um, like Christian values and
Mhm.
like religious background. Like it's whatever helps you the most. But that's just my story, and that's just where I'm at. And I always tell people, I'm like, I understand that my way of grieving, my way of processing is not going to be the same as the next person I ever meet, and that's okay. So I would just say, for whoever's listening and is trying to figure out their way of grieving, to give yourself patience and to give yourself grace,
Mhm.
to say like you don't have to know right off the bat. It took us many months for us to fully flesh out like how do we best grieve, how do we best process, um, and to also give yourself time to grieve and to process. I kind of like what you were saying earlier was like another thing I was told being the man was you can't grieve because you need to be healed and like you need to like be there for your family. Like so stop
Mm,
wasting your time grieving because you need to actually go do something and like
mm,
provide for your family. And I'm from the Midwest originally, and so that is all growing up, I feel like that was quote unquote good advice,
mm,
because everybody says something along those lines, or at least you could get pregnant, or um, at least you got to carry your sons for as long as you did, or whatever it is. It's like meaning, like well intentioned comments, and they're just not helpful because it's like that. How is that helping me in my grief? How is that helping me process what's going on
right.
right
Yeah,
now? So, and that's just it's everybody has their own way of approaching it, is what I'd say. So,
that's true. Because that was the next thing I was going to ask you. You talked a lot about what support helped, but I wanted to hear from you, like what support didn't help. And you mentioned like some of the things people have said. And I can tell you personally, I am guilty of that. When a friend of mine told me a long time ago that she had a loss, I was like, oh, you're still young. You can get pregnant
yeah,
again. And
yep,
it was well meaning at the time. I shouldn't say I didn't know any better. I didn't, but at the time I thought I was saying something that I thought was going to be helpful. And in hindsight, I realized that's not helpful at all. So people
right,
don't do it to be malicious. They do it out of ignorance. They do it out of the attempt to be helpful, but hearing it from someone who has experienced the loss and getting that feedback, okay, like I know you think you're being helpful, but that's actually really not helpful.
right,
Um, is really good.
yeah. And I've tried to have more grace when it comes to
Mhm.
those kinds of things. Um,
Yeah.
it when you're in the depths of it, that's when it hurts the most. Um, because it's like I I don't want to hold that resentment or anything like
Hmm.
that towards people because it's often like I I equate it to basically being I personally feel that we in America do not get the opportunity to be taught how to properly approach grief, approach loss. Um, and that's on us. Like that's on us as a society. Like we just don't think about that kind of stuff. We don't like
Hmm.
to talk about loss. We don't like to talk about grief. Um, but a few of the things that I actually have a list that I wrote on my Substack a couple months ago. These are just a couple things that were said to us. Um, and again, this is not to call somebody out. If you've said this, you've said it. Like learn from it and
Hmm.
just move forward in a better manner in the future. But a few of them that have been said to us were at least you can get pregnant. Never a good one to lead with. This is all part of God's plan. God works in mysterious ways. Have you ever considered adoption instead? At least they passed early so they didn't have to suffer. You'll get over it eventually. It's been a year. Don't you think it's time to move on? At least you have an Earthside child. I don't know why you're so triggered. It's just a pregnancy announcement. Um, and so those are just things that just before we lost Davian, I'll be the first one to admit, like I that last one specifically, I don't know why you're so triggered. It's just a pregnancy announcement. I honestly didn't even think about that before we had Davian and we lost him because when we when we were approaching 14 weeks, I literally was like chomping at the bit to post it on my Instagram because I was so excited to tell people. And after losing him, the amount of people that I saw on our social media that got pregnant and like would go full term or just like pregnancy announcements, I didn't realize how much that really affected me. Um, because it was like, man, here's a couple that, and then it made me like start comparing. Um, and it was like, that's not fair to them, first off. But it's also like, I have a lot more um, consideration before I post stuff like that. So like when we posted about our daughter, we waited until after she was born to even really tell anybody that we had her. And we didn't post like oh, look at us, we're side parents and everything. But and even with Jaden, we never posted that we were pregnant with him. We told like families and family and friends, but we were very conscientious of sharing that kind of news because we had friends that have also gone through loss, and going through it ourselves, we realized very quickly there's some things that are going to trigger you that you aren't even aware of yet. For my wife, for example, um, one that really kind of came out of nowhere was we were pulling into the grocery store after Davian, and we were just finding a parking spot, and there was the parking spots for mothers with children, and she just broke down. Like obviously it wasn't like malicious, it was just it was just the parking spot that the company put out there, but like she didn't know it was going to affect her like that. I didn't know it was going to affect her like that, but it's just it makes you realize things that we take for granted or that we just see and just don't even really think about that could really trigger somebody to go back into their grief. Um, and not saying to walk on eggshells, not saying to shy away from talking about loss, but just being more conscientious of how you approach it, I feel like is a good way to address it, I guess. Um, because I can tell you firsthand, as hard as it is to talk about our sons, I always want to talk about our boys. If you ever ask me about them, like I will gladly tell you about them. I'll tell you about how much we are excited about them, how much we love them, their story. Um, and you can ask anybody, not even me. Like saying saying not just our sons, but like other families of losses, kids, saying their names means so much to all of us in the lost community because it reminds us that we, even though we don't have an Earthside child, that we are still seen and that our kids are still seen. And so that's why the wave of light in October is so important because it it honors those that are gone and allows us to talk about them and share their names, and it's really special, and I just never want that to go unnoticed, I guess.
That's amazing. And when I first came into this role, we were working with a community partner, and her name is, she has an organization called Zeal Xander that came out of the loss of her son. And she said to me, "Do you guys have a Wave of Light event?" And at the time, I didn't know what that was. I'd never heard of it or anything. And she's like, "If your kind doesn't have one, you should do it." And she helped us, to plan it for that first year. And the families that came out, they were so thankful and so grateful to have the event. And then last year, we did it again with community partners, and we did it in two different locations. And those families in that second location were grateful. So that's something we want to continue to offer the community. I used to facilitate it, but I don't have that lived experience. I am not someone who's experienced loss, so I felt like it's not my place to continue to remain in that spot. And the goal was always to start the event for community because it wasn't happening, and then to hand it over to the community and say, "Here, if you guys want to continue this, we want you, to take lead and ownership over it." And so one of our community members who has experienced loss reached out and said, "Hey, I would love to be the facilitator for this event." And I said, "Here you go. Here's all the information you need from anyone that we've partnered with, any resources that we've gathered. We have resources if you want to use it for this year's event." And now I've put it in their hands to say, "Hey, now you can continue this." But happy to be able to start it for our community in San Bernardino. And we'll be working closely this year with Empty Cradle and the Comfort Cub, to kind of expand, resources for that event, because it also happens in San Diego and Temecula as well. So for our families that have experienced loss that are listening, we welcome you to that event this year. That'll be in October, and we'll be posting information about that and how you can attend. So Jeff, I want to move on to talk about your book because I want community to know about what you've authored for them. So in your book, you give voice to fathers' struggles through the character Miles, who retreats inward and encounters stories and wisdom from other fathers. And he has to decide whether to remain in survival mode or to step toward healing. So what did you want fathers to feel when they were reading this book? How did you want them to feel?
Yes, that's a great question. So for anybody that hasn't read the book yet, it's very, when I tell people that it's a fiction book, people are like, wait, what? You're writing about loss? Like, what the heck? So it's a fictional book because the main character is Miles, which actually is honoring our first son, Davian, because his middle name was Miles, is Davian Miles. And he meets another character named Noah, who happens to be honoring our second son, Jaden. His middle name was Noah. And so the whole premise of the book is Miles, in the very first page, experiences loss and loses his son. And to be completely transparent, I wrote it in a way that was like, that was exactly what I was going through when we lost Davian. Like almost verbatim, what happens in that first chapter happened to me in that hospital room. And so I wanted to share our story in a way that was approachable to everybody and that they could see themselves in Miles's story, because what happens is he basically retreats inward, meets another character, and they go on a journey and they meet other fathers of loss along this journey. And it's basically three separate stories wrapped into one fictional story. And each conversation with these three other dads are actually people that we know personally. So these are fathers that my wife and I have a deep relationship with, whether they be really good friends or family of ours. And there's three main topics that they talk about, where it's the loss of never being a maternal dad and going the adoption route and what that's like, experiencing a second trimester loss and then going the IVF route and what that's like and wrestling with that, and then having an Earthside child, but then their second son having trisomy 18 and being given a diagnosis that he was not going to make it, and it was a matter of when he was going to pass versus if he was going to pass, and the weight of having to be a father to your son that is, I believe he was 3 at the time, but you have your Earthside son, but then also having to grieve this unborn son that you have right now that is going to pass away at any moment, but you just never know. And then having to grieve that fallout. And it was really, really hard to read those stories and to like encompass them into like a fictional story. But what I wanted to have my readers feel was that even though everybody's story is different, that the grief of losing a child is not different. It's the same across the board. And that there's no sense of comparison. There's no comparison between somebody that loses their child at 8 weeks versus somebody that has a stillborn at 40 weeks, or even that loses a child when they're 8, 10, 16 years old. Losing a child is one of the hardest things that somebody has to ever go through. And I wanted people to feel that regardless of where you were in your journey, in your life, if you've never even experienced it, to just understand the weight of what it's like to one day have this hope that you're going to be a parent or being a parent, and then the next day waking up and realizing that your child's no longer there, and what that life is like on the other side of losing your child. And that's basically what I wanted to encapsulate in the book, and the mixed emotions that come with that, and the anger that comes with that, the rightful anger. Part of the book I write about is actually all of it. Like basically Miles's whole journey, it was basically my therapy sessions fleshed out. um, and there's a portion of the book where he actually goes into the woods and he has a whole conversation with God. Like God's like a physical person, and he just lays it all out there, and he just like is yelling at him and like berating him and just like asking, why did you let this happen, and basically says that I don't want anything to do with you anymore. And I felt that, honestly. At one point in my life I did feel that, and towards the end of the book he comes back and has another conversation with him, and again I felt that. And it wasn't easy, and it wasn't just like everything was healed. It's been a learning process. It's been a process of trusting again. And um, yeah, I just, through my book, I really wanted to help other families, and specifically dads, to know that it's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel the complex emotions that you're feeling, because you're going to have complex emotions. It's not a one and done. And one of the biggest things that I received from the book, and I share this story all the time because it was so impactful, but um, I always encourage people to leave reviews on Amazon, because that just helps like drive people to see the book and everything. But one of my friends, actually, she has a pretty big following on Instagram, and she was promoting. She was actually there with us when we had Jaden. So she was in the hospital room with him, and she's been such a huge advocate for us in our journey. And she's one of my wife's best friends. But she basically made a post about my book when it came out last year, and she said in the video, like, even if you don't know the person, or like if you don't want the person to know who you are sending it to you, you just want to send it anonymously, just gift them this book. Like, you don't even have to tell them anything, just send it to them. Well, somebody saw that video and somebody did that, because at the end of the book I actually have a page that is dedicated to my email address, which is holdingontothelightbook@gmail.com, where anybody can email me. I'm the only person that has access to that email, and I set it up to be a means of continuing conversations with people. And I actually had an email come through that was from a couple up in Michigan. No idea who these people are. I've never met them in my life. And she said that they had recently experienced a loss in December of 2025, almost exactly the way that we did with Jaden. Um, and she said that her husband read my book, and it was the first book he has read in over a decade. And it was the first book or it was the first time since losing their son that he felt somebody actually understood where he was coming from, and that he felt seen, and that
That's amazing.
he could put his
Yeah.
words into um into like focus for his wife, because his wife was like, I can't communicate with you because you don't talk about it, you don't know how to open. And he's like, I just have never understood how to. And it wasn't, and I'm not trying to like give myself a pat on the back, but it's just like, if I never sell a single book ever again, just knowing that that was what affected somebody in a positive way, that's I'm good, you know.
That's great. And I don't know of many other books that are written that way for specifically for fathers. So it's amazing to have another resource and to have such great feedback from another lost father that helped him to navigate that situation as well. And we will put in the caption when we post the podcast how people can access the book so they can read it for themselves and share it with other lost dads that they may know of. So thank you for sharing that information about your book, and thank you for writing the book. So I just wanted to see if you had any words of wisdom or advice for fathers who are navigating loss based upon your own personal experience. So what would you tell a dad in the first days and weeks after loss?
Oh, that's a hard question. Because I would say it just depends on what they're going through, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
but if I was to give an answer, I would just say that it's okay to grieve. Like it's okay to just sit with it. You don't have to have answers. You don't have to have a plan. Because as a guy, as a dad, as a husband, um, I can pretty much speak for every guy out there that we want to fix everything. When there's a problem, we want to fix it. And when it comes to this, when it comes to loss, we can't fix it. We can't get our kids back.
Yeah.
And that's okay to sit with that realization. As hard as it is, that's your reality, you know. But to not be complacent in saying that that's where the story ends. Because what I would say in the first few days, sit with it, grieve, do whatever you need to do to ground yourself, to get your anger out, like within, like, be safe, but
Mm-hmm.
like really sit with your grief, understand what you're going through, find other people that are in the community, find other people that are in this lost community, because there's so many. Like the craziest thing to me was before we lost Davian, I was unaware of the amount of people that are in our lives that I knew of that I didn't know had loss. And when we
Mm-hmm.
experienced that, the amount of people that came around us and they were like, "We're here with you. We've been through this." You know, all walks of life, whether it be people in their 80s, people in their 50s, their 30s, their 20s, whatever. The amount of people that are in this community that you wouldn't even expect, because a lot of people, I don't know, like maybe I'm an outlier. I'm just a weirdo, but like I feel like I talk about our boys all the time. I'm not shy about talking about our story. But before our story, then again, people probably didn't want to approach me. Um, I just feel that there are so many people that are willing to come alongside you if you give them a chance to and are willing to open up. Um, and even if it's online, there's a lot of online communities, there's a lot of support groups all across the US, all across the world. And it's just been such a benefit and a blessing to me to be able to connect with these people because I don't feel alone. I don't feel like I'm the only person going through this. And that's just encouraging that I don't have to walk through
Yeah,
this alone.
absolutely. So for our dads who may still be holding on to that grief and don't know how to express themselves emotionally or how to communicate with those around them, especially their partner and their loved ones, What helped you most when you didn't have the words or couldn't find the words to say to others or your partner?
I would say, kind of going back to the idea that I didn't need to have all the answers and I didn't need to have all the right words, and just being okay with
Mm.
being uncomfortable and being okay with the idea that this is not the end of our story, and that even though what I'm walking through right now is the hardest thing I've ever experienced in my entire life, and then have to do it again.
Mm.
I would never wish it upon my I would never wish it upon anybody ever to have to go through the loss of a child. But one thing that was encouraging to me to help me find my voice was to know that my story, however big or small it is to somebody else, could give hope to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what encouraged me to write the book, to do the advocacy work that I'm doing. And it's like, honestly, I wrote the book, it's on Amazon, but I don't care about how many books I sell. It's more, I just want to help people. I just want people to have a resource available to them because I didn't when I needed it the most. And if my words are able to encourage somebody to go start a nonprofit or to reach out to somebody that recently had a loss or somebody that
Mm-hmm.
has never walked through that community to just become educated and like how to approach the situation and to be comfortable with approaching the situation, that's all that I'm going for. And just, just holding that dear to my heart, and to just know that like I'm not alone in this community. There's so many people that are willing to listen to your story.
Thank you, Jeff. So I just wanted to ask, are there any resources that you could share to a father who's experienced loss that could be listening right now?
Yeah, so a couple of them that I've found extremely helpful. Um, I'm going to do a self plug, my book, obviously, a little selfish there, but uh, like I said before, when I was going through our losses, I genuinely didn't know of any resources, and so that's why I wrote my book. So my book, it's on Amazon. Um, I would also say a book that was gifted to me that was helpful. It's called Lament for a Son. It's about a guy that his son actually passed away when he was 26, I think, from a climbing accident out in
Mm.
Australia. He was on a trip and he passed away, and it's just him in his like 60s processing what it's like to lose an adult son and having 26 years with him, and like watching him grow up and just having to get that phone call, and like that was such an impactful book. It's a very short book, but it's very impactful. Um, Organizations wise, I would definitely say Sad Dads Club. Rob is amazing. Um, they're based out in Maine. They have a Discord that I'm actually part of. There's over like 500 guys in there, all lost dads, bunch of range of topics, and it's only for lost dads. That's the other thing. It's not just random people jumping in there. It's like you have to be invited. It's on their
Okay.
website.
Okay.
It's on their website that you can like say like, "Hey, I'm so and so. This is the loss I experienced," and they obviously like invite you in. But the amount of support I've seen through that community, oh my gosh, they do two retreats. So they do one in October and then one in April, and it's just like a group of guys that get together and um, are just encouraging one another. That's just been so helpful to me. I recently started partnering with them about a year ago. Um, No Footprint Too Small. They're I mean, there's so many organizations out there that I'm partnered with, that I have been on podcasts with. Um, Child Life on Call, Katie Taylor down in Texas is an amazing podcast host. I was actually on her podcast recently, and she talks about um, a lot of different topics. But one thing that she's really been focusing on is like helping other lost community or lost families as well. So definitely go support her as well. Nikki the Death Doula, amazing woman that also I was a guest on her podcast. She's fantastic, really funny gal. But she is a death doula, and
Hmm.
that was really, really helpful for me to like know that there are people that are death doulas out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it's really hard to um, talk about death and talk about grief, and I would say she is one of the best resources on it. Um, she was such a help to me. And so, yeah, those are just a couple of them. I can obviously send you over a bunch more, but um, yeah, there's so many organizations out there. You just got to look around, and um, every single state, every single city probably has something that you can
Mm-hmm.
find. So I would really, really encourage, just go online, go on Instagram, and see if there's anything local to wherever you're at, wherever you're listening at. So
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you
yeah,
for sharing your story and also holding space for fathers. So, what's one sentence you want to leave with bereaved fathers during Men's Health Month?
I would say to all the fathers of loss out there that you are seen, you are so valued, and your grief matters so much. And never let anybody tell you that it's not worth your time to take to grieve your children. And always say
That's,
their names.
that was beautiful and absolutely. So, we're grateful to you for joining us today during Men's Health Month to talk about fatherhood, grief, and healing. And if today's conversation brought up anything for you, please take care of yourself. Take a moment to pause, reach out to us for support and resources, and lean on support from your community and from your family. So in the caption, we're going to put Jeff's book, Holding On to the Light, and the resources that he shared for fathers and families. Just know that you're not alone and you don't have to carry this by yourself. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Healthy Start San Bernardino podcast, where we elevate voices, share resources, and hold hope for a healthy start. We'll see you next time.